Hello, everyone, and welcome to Butterfly Kisses. This is Amy Gray-Cunningham, your host. Today, we are joined by Dr. Vic, who is a former certified pediatric chiropractor who became a business mindset coach. Not something I would put two and two together, but we're going to ask him how that happened and where that came about. He is the author of 3 books, which most recently he just released his 3rd book, Decoding the Matrix, which I have several questions for him about that, which is going to be awesome. Dr. Vic is the creator and owner of the Mindful Experiment podcast and has been ranked in the top 1% of podcasts globally from listennotes.com. I love it. A fellow podcaster. I love it. His unique and diverse background has allowed him to help his clients become more whole and lead to a more fulfilling life through leveraging their own mind and reframing their mindsets. Dr. Vic does this through helping his clients become aware of their limiting beliefs, habits, and standards, and the stories they tell themselves. I don't have any stories that I tell myself. I don't know what he's talking about, but we'll see more. Once they're aware, then he shares how they can reframe, change, and create beliefs that supports their dreams. So please help me welcome Dr. Vic to Butterfly Kisses. Vic,
Amy, thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate you joining us. That was an interesting intro, I have to say.
Shock and awe is my game, shock and awe is my game.
I love it. So how in the world did you go from a pediatric chiropractor to a mindset coach?
I love this question. It's because it's two opposite. Well, it's not opposite in some ways, because once I share the story, you'll see it. But
have you ever read Stephen King's memoir?
Mm-mm.
And how he actually writes books?
I have not.
You should read it one time. Basically, he takes something and throws it together and makes a book. And that's kind of what I think about when I read your bio. I was like, interesting. It's a Stephen King novel.
I'm gonna have to check that out now.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, my journey in chiropractic, when I got to chiropractic school, I wanted to understand the depths of healing. So unfortunately, when I got to chiropractic school, it was in the beginning, very medical. It's like becoming a medical doctor. I mean, it's the same curriculum for about up the first year and a half. And before I got into chiropractic school, my chiropractor taught me a little bit about the philosophy of chiropractic and all these different things. So it was like different than what people would think chiropractic is. It's, there's a healing potential to this. There's this, a lot of universal law or universal principles and all these different things. And then here I go to chiropractic school and it's all science, left brain dominant. This is how things are. So I started studying energy medicine because I want to understand deeper aspects of things, became a Reiki master and trainer and all those kind of things. But there was something that always stood out to me in chiropractic that I learned. What we do as chiropractors is, when you get an adjustment from a chiropractor, what we're doing is we're removing something called a subluxation. It's a very fancy word, but it just means miscommunication between the brain and the body. Some of information, the impulses are just not getting crystally clear to each other. And so, but what we've learned through our philosophy is that 80% of the time, what causes those things is mental, emotional stressors. So right off the bat, I was like, okay, well, I can do certain things, but I want to understand why that's showing up in people's lives. So between the energy medicine and then learning and wanting to understand more in depths of how just life works, how the mind works, I want to understand how life works. So from that desire or choice, that led me to going and tapping into the mind. But as a chiropractor, we're really brain doctors. So I studied a lot in neurology, functional neurology, neuroscience, all this fun stuff. And I started to learn how the brain works. And after I got out of chiropractic school, for my own success that I wanted to create, I said, I got to get in here and figure out, mindset's everything. So how do I tap in and figure these things out? And so I started studying behavioral psychology and all this behavioral neurology, just understanding how things work and then tying in the energy principles and energy medicines that I learned, spiritual truths and so forth. And I started to pull in universal laws that I was studying back in chiropractic school and so forth, that I started to try to put this all together and say, how can I create success for myself? Because I was the first doctor in my family. I don't come from, I don't come from family, very blue collar family. I don't come from money, very blue collar family. I come from family. Trust me, I have family. Sorry about that. But I come from a very blue collar family. And so it was one of those things where I didn't want to have those same experiences. And so I started to say, well, there's these rules to this game called life, and I'm going to try and figure these out. So that's what ended up happening. But as I was starting to get my own success in my business and hitting my financial peaks and recalibrating my whole entire business to really serve me rather than doing what I was told, being the conditioning that I had, there came a point where my reach was going to be limited. I knew that. Like, I had a very successful chiropractic office, but the problem was I just had this big vision and dream of what I want to achieve in this life, in this lifetime that I have. And I just knew my reach was not being met. And so there came a point where I said, you know what, I'm going to start doing coaching. I figured this thing out. I got tired of hearing the self-help, personal development, top business and entrepreneur people telling you what you should be doing and everyone tells you what to think rather than how to think, right? Here's the 3 things to do this. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with those things. I sometimes do those too, because we live in a world that's conditioned that way. But that's not teaching people how to really be them and to share their uniqueness. And so I got to a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to start doing this. And then 3.5 years ago, I made the decision to be a coach, specifically business mindset coach. And then 6 months ago, my wife and I moved out of state. We're from Chicago originally, and we moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. And that's when I went into full-time coaching. And so it's been, that's pretty much the story of how that whole transition came about.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, I've been to several chiropractors before, and never would I have thought that they would become a mindset coach at all.
I've heard that phrase many different times, especially when patients come to my office and all of a sudden they're like coming in for pain, or if I'm working with a child with something. And I'm like, listen, that's not the issue. It's the brain we have to work on. I go, most people think a chiropractor is neck pain, back pain, headaches of some sort. And that's what we serve and help with. I go, we're really rewiring the brain to help you adapt better to your environment, which allows you to be healthier. Because when we adapt, that's actually, you're actually healthier. You thrive more. You'll thrive more in your environment. When we don't adapt, and that's what Charles Darwin talked about when it came to, everyone remembers survival of the fittest, or, who the strongest will survive, whatever those phrases were. He never said those. If you ever read the actual quote, he says, it's not the fastest or the strongest that's going to survive. It's the one who can adapt. That was his quote. And so it's, when you look at that, it's like, oh yeah, the one who can adapt. And it makes sense in life, right? Think about it in business, think about it in relationships, think about it in your own health. If you can't adapt to your environment, you're going to cease, or the relationship's going to see everything. It won't thrive. It's going to be in a very survival aspect rather than a thriving.
All right. What are some ways that people can adapt to their environment?
Oh, well, I mean, besides chiropractic, here, honestly, there's, from a mindset perspective, we always have to find, how do we neutralize our nervous system? How do we get back to center, right? We are living so much in what part of your nervous system is called the sympathetic, which is that fight, freeze, or flight mode. And so when you go in that state of mind, you can't be in a state of growth. You just can't. That's survival. That's your nervous system. That's all about survival. It is the same. There's levels of degrees to the response, but it is the response of seeing a lion in front of you, and you're just all of a sudden it kicks in gear, right? Now there's degrees to that, because you may not have that full on, the nervous system firing in that full mode, but we're living in that every single day. I mean, I saw this. We are so conditioned as a society now that I saw children. This is what pushed me into pediatrics. We have certain technologies we can check and see that. And I would see children being born and they're already stuck in this mode. That breaks my heart, because that's our future. Wow. And to see them stuck in there, they're already trained, because we know that the nervous system is learning while they're in the womb. We know this now 100% for sure. And the science has supported this. And so now we're looking, going, wow, we do imprints while the baby's in the womb. Personalities develop in the womb. Wow, their conditioning starts in the womb. This is crazy. So then it's like, and as I'm sharing this with the recording, my wife's about 2 weeks away from having our first child. So
yay, congratulations.
Oh, I'm so excited. And it's one of those things where when we found out she was pregnant, I would say, okay, honey, from this moment on, we have to be more mindful. We have to be more certain ways. I'm like, because we're gonna have a girl. And I'm like, she is going to be, we're conditioning her here on out. So even though in this, I said, but we're gonna fail it, we're gonna mess up either way. We can't always be on our A game. But so the ways I teach and share, you got to neutralize your nervous system. And there's a lot of things you can do. The easiest thing to do, no matter where you are, take a cold shower, jump in cold water. You're going to no matter what you're worrying about, what you're stressed about, wherever your nervous system's at, your brain's going to have to shut all that off to go into survival. And once it does that, you forget about what you're putting energy to. Because now you're just like, I need to get, I'm in a just stressful situation. I gotta survive here. That's where my energy needs to go. And so then once you get out of that, your worries, your stuff, all that stuff is not there anymore. Your bad mood, what was bothering you, it can't exist because your brain can't be in two places at the same. It can't focus on two things at the same time, or your consciousness, I should say. And so when you think about that, that's something you can do. There's breath work that you can do, right? Breathing. There's a part of your brain on the top part of your midbrain called it's called the breath pacemaker. It's a cluster of neurons that pick up on how much your breathing pattern is going, how fast you're breathing, how deep you're going. It picks up on all these different things, and it alters the nervous system to respond to that. That's why, like in Hindu practicing and, or in certain practices in Buddhism, they'll talk about the breath being the life force and how you breathe is how you live. I mean, there's truth to that. Like this is 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, they were saying this, and now we have the neurology to prove that. Like, oh my God, they were right. And so doing practices of breath work, and it doesn't matter which one, there's so many that are out there. And I always tell people, don't get caught up into whatever the fad is, just do what works for you because it all works. It's just like energy work. When I studied 10 to 12 different energy modalities to figure out how I can alter energy and help somebody. But after about the 10th, 11th, I did one more just to see. It's like language. It's just different ways we can communicate. It's all working with energy at the end of the day. It's just which one you like, which one that you prefer. And so those are just a couple there. I can create a whole longer list, but I think that's a good starting point, at least.
What do you mean by energy?
Energy, like, and when I talk about energy healing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yes.
So just the vibration of where someone's at. I know, and this is something hard because we can't measure this. So we mention energy, but if you want to break it down to the most simplest form of what we can talk about, if you think of an atom, right? You have the electrons going around, you have the proton, neutrons in the middle of that. There is a force, there's a vibration that has them go to a certain point, right? Because sometimes I'll ask people like, what's the difference between lead and gold and let's say copper? Why? And they'll be like, oh, it's the molecular structure, blah, 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 blah. Like, okay, but what binds that together to show up that way? Well, there's the electromagnetic forces, and they do this and this. And I'm like, okay. And I'll be like, what's that force? Well, it's just a force that we know that exists. When you look really down to it, there's just this force that, electromagnetic forces that bind things and hold things together. That's energy. Now, when I say vibration, you can think of it as, although we don't have any tools to really measure this, you can think of a vibration as like when you're at a higher vibe or doing things like that, you're going to be more vibrant. There's more positive emotions that show up. There's more, you have more magnitude, creating more of what it is you desire. It's your life force that comes out more. When we're in a negative or lower vibrational state, these are things that are going to be like, you'll feel it. You'll be in a lower emotional state. You don't have that vibrancy, the lack of joy in life and stuff like that. So these energies are different aspects to what have a certain coding or a vibration to. And there's some people that have come out and actually kind of put a scientific spin to it. Like one of the books that changed my life was Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force, where he actually used muscle testing for over 30 years of research to show, he called it conscious levels, or he uses conscious technology. I just took that and it just made sense to me to call it vibration. Now, I'm not saying that's what he says. It's just what I interpret it as. Mm-hmm. And you can actually figure out where these levels are. Then there's another doctor came out, Dr. Masaru Emoto, the hidden messages of water. Mm-hmm. That is a pure example. So if somebody wants to say, well, what's energy? How can I understand? It's just a term that's being thrown out there. Well, now you can look and see how energy influences water. How does consciousness influence water to change the molecular structure? That's energy, because look, if the energy is at a different level, we can do that. One more just to share for your listeners, there's something called somatics. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Mm-hmm. I have.
You have what?
I've heard of somatics, but
so it's very fascinating, right? You change the frequency of something, and all of a sudden, a different sacred geometry, just a geometrical shape, changes on there with sand, right? And so that's energy. So different states have different geometrical shapes. Well, that can play a role in different vibrations of an energy, has different emotions, and has different X, Y, Z, and so forth.
It's amazing what we've done, what we can do with science now to prove the things that people have been saying all along.
Well, it's just like I put a post on Facebook a couple of days ago, and I was just asking like, hey, why does the law of attraction work for some and not for others? And I always just, I already know these things, but it's like, I'm just curious to see what people say. And it's interesting what came up. And some people were like, well, and somebody was saying like, it's a false doctrine or something. And I was like, well, do you believe in law of gravity? I mean, and they're like, well, yeah, but gravity has been tested, proven, repeatable this. And I was going, what do you think the law of attraction is? Like, it's called a law for a reason. You're like, what studies? I said, the Zerber effect. Just go study that. You'll see it right there. That would have showed how the law of, the law of attraction is not just something out there. It's actually a scientific principle that we can support now to say, wow. And I love learning this stuff because you look back 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, they knew this already. Mm-hmm. They shared this stuff already. Mm-hmm. Now, here we are as humans thinking, oh my God, look at our great science that's showing all this. And I would love to know what they're thinking. Like, yeah, we've been saying that for how long now?
Yeah.
You needed that validation. It really is, because like a lot of times when I share stuff, even chiropractic, like a lot of the principles I'll share in chiropractic, I'm like, yeah, like, tone and the vibration or the tone of where the nervous system is. And that still to the day, we don't know if he was meaning that from a vibrational standpoint, a consciousness level standpoint. We don't know, but he was very into energy medicine, the creator of chiropractic. But I'll tell people, he talked about nervous system back in 1895 that we are uncovering the last 10 years have been proving that to be correct. 1895, he didn't even have the science and all the understanding of how the brain works and all this, but he knew somehow, some way that he was guided in some way to know those kind of things. Or even some of the research I'll share, I'm like, how the nervous system works in certain ways. I'm like, yeah, this research is from like 1920. I'm not going back 5,000 years ago. But Hippocrates said, the cause, look to the spine for the cause of disease. That was back in 300 BC, roughly. So there's that, that we're catching up, in other words.
Yeah. Eventually.
You hope, right?
Yeah. Eventually, baby. Well, let's go into your book, Decoding the Matrix. I absolutely love that title. How did you come up with that title?
It came to me, I've always heard, when I got into spirituality stuff, they're all like, oh, we live in the matrix. We got to get out of the matrix. We got to escape the matrix. And I'm always like, well, what does that mean to you? And it was always, it was just a phrase people were using. But, when you ask them, they'd be like, oh, it's just, got to get out of your controls and this. And I was just like, well, as I went deeper with the questions, I wasn't getting the answers I was expecting. So there came a point, I wrote my second book, and I have a goal of writing a book every year. That's what my goal is. I want to write 30 books by the time I'm 62. That's just one of my visions I have. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't, but my goal is to work towards that. So my second book I wrote in 2019. Well, I didn't do 20. I didn't do 21. COVID hit, and I was focusing on other things with my coaching business and helping doing that. And I was like, you know what? I wasn't being guided and led to like, hey, it's time to write another book. At the end of 21, something kept coming to me and saying, you need to decode the matrix. This is what you got to, because I started talking about conditioning of the mind and how we're conditioned and all this different programming and why we do what we do. And I started talking a lot about that. And then all of a sudden I just get this feeling coming in like, decode the matrix, just decode the matrix. That's the title of your book. And I'm like, decoding the matrix. Okay. So then as soon as I feel like I got to write this book, then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I need to get a cover. I need to see it. And I have to see the visual, and then I'll be good to go. And so when I started to work with the cover, I had someone doing it. I was like, it's got to be someone who I just get these visions. I'm like, I got to be someone who's dark, because we're all in darkness and we're trying to show who we really are. And that's breaking out of the matrix. And the matrix, just to clarify, is basically the human collective consciousness. The matrix is not something bad. So like the human collective consciousness, for those who may not know, is just all the vibration, thoughts, and emotions that everyone is, and you're averaging all that out in humanity. And that's just what it is. It's not good or bad. It just is. Animals have it, planets have it, other planets and aliens, we all have it. It's always going to be there. It's just the average or where we're vibing in. And so the key is, do you want to be average, or do you want to be your unique light? And your unique light, your potential, achieving your potential in your life, that's breaking out of it, because you're going to get out of a different vibe than what everyone else is doing. And I talk a lot about in the book how we're conditioned, how we're influenced, where does it all begin? And then how does that shape our reality and puts us into a sleep? That's why a lot of the Hindu practice called, Maya, we're all in this illusion, and we're all sleeping in some way. And to me, for my studies, it's like, yeah, but we can have an awakened life. We can be fully, and what I mean by awaken is you're living your spiritual truth. Your spirit is literally, your soul is being, you're being like at a soul level, like what it is to be like as a soul. and you're able to express that as much as you possibly can in the physical realm. Basically, just bringing your unique self and your gifts to this world.
Do you believe that reality that we perceive as our own reality is more of an illusion or a reality of sorts?
So, like, what's real?
Yes.
Yeah, I love this question. So I studied this for about 3 years because I did something, and it really opened up a whole world of stuff that I wanted to study, which was the soul life. What is it on the other side? Why do we come here? What's the evolution of the soul? Do we ever have does our light ever dim in the sense of like we're done and that's it? And I had to really get away from the human mind of like, oh, there's levels to it of what we do. And I had to get more into understanding of the soul. So studying near-death experiences, studying, connecting with mediums to talk to other, souls on the other side, family members or people, some souls I just never met, just because I wanted to have whatever I was allowed to understand or get to hear and for my experience. And nothing's real. The only real life is the soul life. This is just all an illusion, to the sense of it's kind of like a simulation of where we choose something and it feels real, right? We have these 5 senses, which are mental impulses that are just electricity flowing in the brain and mean something. But I don't want to take away that the experience of this is not valuable, and it's not that. It's very much so. That's why we come here, or else we wouldn't choose to come to this university called Earth to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so much immense value, but our realness is afterwards. So they say, like, when I talk to study a lot of near-death experiences, read a lot of their stuff, or people who crossed over, they would always say it's like you're awakening from a dream. Like it's a very, like when you die, and I had this experience, I did some psychedelics one time, and my fear that I had to overcome was death. And I had to realize that death is not what I was taught it was. Like all that conditioning of how much we hold on death, I literally had to go through that experience. It's a crazy experience of knowing you got to let go and you're fighting on for life. And it was just showing me that image. And then finally I let go, and it was like literally it's like going to sleep. You go to sleep, and then you don't try to sleep. You don't attempt to sleep. You just sleep. When you sleep, you sleep. And it's like lights out, boom, your lights on. And it's like you're waking up, and it's like a very groggy feeling. And you're just slowly waking back up. And when I had that experience and I started going through the studying of all this and talking to souls, they'll talk about that. It's like the bright light. It's kind of like when that bright light that you're walking towards the light kind of a thing. Like it's not really a myth. There is some truth to that, because you're going back into the light world, the soul world, that kind of world. And it's literally like you took a nap and you woke up in the middle of the deep sleep cycle, and you're just very groggy, and it takes you some time to wake back up.
I posed a question one time to a good friend of mine about what if the world that we're living in now is actually us sleeping. And when we go to sleep and we dream, that's actually the real world.
It really is.
I'm like, what a concept.
Well, you think about it this way too, like everything's vibration, right? So different dimensions and different levels. If we're vibing at this level, which is it's a lower vibration, we're starting to rise up. And I talk about this in my book, going from Homo sapiens to Homo spiritus. We're gonna start to open that up. We're at that point of evolution. Everything's a game. So it's like people say, well, why now? Why didn't we do it 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago? And it's like, there's a whole game to this process. Just as a soul, you chose to come at this time. Why this time? Why at this moment in Earth's evolution, in humanity's evolution, did you choose this time rather than 800 years ago or 1,000 years ago? There's a reason why you came. And for my studying, just and maybe this will change 10, 20 years down the road, but like I've had that question. Why do we come to Earth? Why do we come for this whole purpose? And I always say, I'm like, there's only 2 reasons that I've ever could figure out. And that is, number one, the gift was needed here, your gift, your uniqueness, your light, your energy. And the other is the experience, you to learn. You had to evolve. You want to learn something. And I always say in the spirit realms, what I learned is that like you can learn how to make a brownie, and you can learn how to make brownies really, really well. You can study it, you can do all that. But to actually do the work, you go to Earth for that. You go, and now you're going to go do the work and learn, and it's, I love that. And this is not my concept. This is someone I heard from from a medium was telling me that from an analogy. Cause I was like, what's okay, I want to learn something. Why can't I learn it in the spirit world? Why do I have to come here? And they're like, well, here's an example. You ever try to study something and you kept studying and studying and studying it, and you learned it, you understood it all? I was like, yeah. And then they're like, then what about doing the work to actually test it and see? And I was like, oh yeah. And they're like, that's why you call it a university. You call it a university all the time. It's very like that. And I was like, all right, cool. That's all right. I like that. Now I can see the desire to be here. And if you study like a lot of Buddhism stuff, I study a lot of that stuff, and it's fascinating. They'll talk about like, I don't know if it was Buddhism or please correct if I'm wrong, but it was one of the things where they talk about like in the spirit realm, maybe it's just a spirit, someone I was communicating with, but it was like, you have to have a desire to want to be in the soul realm, but that same desire in the soul realm to be in the physical realm. Mm-hmm. And when you can find that happy balance, when you understand that the essence of both the values of that, like that is like true enlightenment in many ways. And I was like, I could start to see that now. Because before I used to be like, oh, why am I here? I don't belong here. I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel part of this world. I had a lot of those feelings. And now it's like, now I'm at a point in my life where it's like, oh no, I definitely belong here. I may be an oddball, but you know what? I don't care. I know what my vision and purpose is now. Like I'm very in tune with it. And it's just like, I'm going to make this experience as much as exciting as I can. And I'm going to share as much as I can, to leave as much as I can to the earth, and also learn from my things that I need to evolve as a human being also, and as a soul.
Now, how did you come to your awakening process? Did it just happen like one morning you woke up and you're like, oh, I totally understand this? Or was it over time, like peeling back onions or layers of onions? And
I wish it was just waking up and just being that. No, it's been a process. I was raised Roman Italian Catholic. So Catholicism was built into me. And it was one of those things where I had questions and they weren't getting answered. And there came a point where I went away to school at Arizona State. And all of a sudden, I just started to say, well, there's no one here who could tell me no anymore. So I'm going to start looking at other things, right? I don't have to I follow a priest and see what they have to tell me and just take that as is, because that's what I was told. Now I'm going to go study. So I started studying Hinduism, and I started studying Buddhism, a little bit of Judaism, and other different, cult religions and stuff like that. I just wanted to know what was out there and what was their message, because like one thing that just never stood right with me is, if you don't see Jesus as your savior, you go to hell. And I was like, how can someone in Africa who doesn't know Jesus at all, they're deemed no matter what they do in their life, they're going to hell? Yeah, that's why we have to have missionaries and go out there. I was like, that makes no sense to me. I was like, I'm not trying to, for any religion out there, I never bash a religion. They all have their purposes, but it's one of those things I was like, it just doesn't mean truth to me. So I started to peel back layers and try to find truth, but it wasn't a smooth process. There was always something, going through that. I had to, go through and understand, like, here's what I was told, but I always had the inner feeling that was something different. And I wanted to just understand the truth of everything. I wanted to get to that truth, and I couldn't find it in one, but I did find it in everything, which was interesting, because like I can learn from what Jesus teaches and some of what the Bible and Catholicism teaches, but I could take also what Hinduism teaches, and there's some truth there. And I started looking into Buddhism and Tao Buddhism and all the different other ones. And I was like, man, I love what they teach, but I was never fully in, but there was pieces I can take. So I'm like, why can't I just take all the bits? And that's when I started to realize they're all sharing their part of the percentage of the truth. But if you take it all, if you just encompass it all, now you have the whole pie. And that was kind of my journey and my awakening process. But it started to go deeper then as I got into chiropractic school, as I started going to energy medicine or just going through my spiritual aspects and really looking at what's real and how I can, with energy healing, how I was able to do stuff that was different than what I was being told or what I was taught. And I was like, this is fascinating. There's a whole new world here that I don't know. And that's kind of what always piqued my interest to learn more. But there was some definitely dark moments in the process, because you're dismantling what you thought was real. And, it's like, wait a minute, but that's all my life. This is what I was used to. And then finding out there's a whole new different world out there. And that was, it was a fun process. Let me tell you.
How were you able to remove or let go of or release those limiting beliefs that you had from growing up as Roman Catholic?
That was not an easy process. Some things just had to take time. But there comes a point where, humans we make change in our life after we've fallen down so many times, and we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Right. And what I mean by that is, there came points in my life, like when I was raised Roman Italian Catholic, I had to be a people pleaser. I had to please all the time, couldn't offend anyone. There was all these like rules and guidelines. So authority is what I had to abide to in many ways. And I'm not one that, there's authority to a certain degree. I respect authority, but I won't, there's a certain, certain layer to that. And, but there came a lot of times where I was just hitting walls, and I started to look back at my life, and I would start to see like, here we go. Here's why I was raised this way. And this is coming up this way. And it's so strict, or this is what I have to do. And it's like, but why does it have to be a regiment? Right. My whole life has been regiment in certain ways. And so to break away from that, it was just like trial and error, really. It wasn't like I had a certain plan. I didn't have it figured out. Things will show up in my life, and eventually I get point of something showing up that I was just tired of it. It could have been in chiropractic office where it's like people pleasing people, and I'm trying to do the best I can for them, and then they still don't appreciate it, don't like it. And then I'm looking at my self-worth, and I'm not worthy enough, right? Because in the Catholicism, you're not worthy to take the body of Christ unless you forgive all your sins, because you're a sinner, and you're a sinner the moment you're born. And that always fueled me in a wrong way, because I'm like, I'm already deemed bad, and I just came into this world. How is that possible? Again, certain psychology that just didn't make sense to me. But there came a point where I was like, I am valuable. I am good enough. I make mistakes, but that's okay. But I had to get to a point of a lot of lows and get tired of being in that low, to where all of a sudden I was like, where's this coming from? And that's what intrigued me about mind so much, because when I started to look back at my life, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what they used to say this. Or oh my God, that's what they said here. And then here's my mom marine conditioning. My grandmother did that. And all of a sudden it's like, I see the pattern, and I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm like, I am worthy. I'm good enough. It's okay to make a mistake. It's perfectly fine to make a mistake. I'll learn from that. I'm not perfect. That's okay. But at the same token, I don't have to get someone else's approval to be okay with that. And that was huge for me. And it took a while. It wasn't like a 2-month process or it took years. There was a lot of conditioning I had to break through. But as I kept peeling the layers, getting closer, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting there. I'm at a point now in my life where I'm like, I love it. I so much less. I have less anxiousness. I'm a lot more freer. I make mistakes. I'm like, it is what it is. And if someone judges, that's on them. It's not on me. They're just a projection of their self, of where they are. And so it's a lot more freer, I must say.
Why do you think that we have, struggle? Why do you think struggle is even, obviously it's to experience life, but how can we overcome struggle?
Let go of the resistance. That's the easiest way I can say. Resistance is what causes all struggle. They always say like what you resist persists. There's a lot of truth in that, because pay attention to where you're giving your energy to, right? And energy can just be where your focus is. And so if you're focusing on that resistance, or you're trying to slow something down, or you don't want to have the rejection, or you don't want to have this, or you don't want to have that, whatever it may be, you're giving your power to that, which is giving it more. It's just like when people say, I'm going to fight cancer, right? A lot of times people say that's a whole hashtag fight cancer, or there's other fancier terms they use. I always look at them like, you're giving energy to cancer. How can you fight your body that it's doing it out of a need, not of a want? And then on top of that, when you look at cancer, when you say fight, you're resisting what it is, instead of understanding and letting go and learning from it. Why is it existing in the first place? But instead of going there, we get into the fight mode, right? That mental toughness. We get into all of that. This is why I teach a lot of entrepreneurs is like, get rid of your mental toughness, because that's actually holding you back. Because they're like, well, no, you have to be resilient. You got to be able to be strong to handle things. I'm like, yeah, that's a great characteristic to have. Trust me. You're talking to a type A driver personality. I am with you 100% on that, right? Totally there. But I will tell you that if you keep thinking you need mental toughness, and you're going to have things keep showing up in your life to prove, because your brain's going to have to do that. Ego, once you say something like, I need to have mental toughness for XYZ, that's a belief, that's a code. Now, all of a sudden, the brain, the way it works, is going to say, okay, you really value that? You really believe this? Well, now I'm going to have to show this to you in the conscious world, just so you can see that, to validate what you believe. So you're creating this whole cycle of that.
I always say that when you ask the angels for help, if you're telling the world, I need money, they're going to give you more reasons to need money, because that's what you're asking for. So they're there to help you.
It's just, and that's the thing. It's always that, wherever you're, and that's, I think, that like law of attraction, people say it doesn't work. And I'm always like, you're just like when I want something, right? Oh, I want this, or I want that. If you really think about the word want, when you use it, do you use want when you look at something you don't have? Let's say, for example, the neighbor next door buys a beautiful new luxury car, right? And you can afford the luxury car, and you look and you're like, or let's say you can't, it doesn't matter, either or. And you look and you go, oh, I want that. That's nice. I like that. Well, why all of a sudden are you interested in that? You looked and saw, wait, I don't have that. So the word want, you're always looking, it only comes from what you're lacking. And this was one of the just simple principles like that can change the whole thing. Instead, choose what you want to have, or choose what you want to experience. Sorry, because that's going to be, then you're coming from a place of power. It's like, hey, I'm in the universal catalog. I like that. That's what I choose to have. That's a cool, I want to have that experience, right? You're just choosing. There's no lack. There's nothing like that. But, even thinking like when you say, I need money, it's always like we're looking outside ourselves. And it's just something we do as humans so much. And we need to learn to take, we don't realize, like, a lot of the work I do is just helping people take their power back. Like, literally stop putting your power out there and bring it here. And it's so hard to unwire people that way. I have clients I work with sometimes, and I love when they finally get it and they're like, oh my God, I've been doing this for so long. I can't believe this. And I'm like, you're starting to see the big picture now. And they're just like, yeah, holy cow. Like, I get what you're saying now. It's like, I know what I teach is you're not going to get overnight. It's going to take a process.
It's funny because what you just said, I actually just posted on Facebook the other day because I was listening to a video that Wayne Dyer had done on manifesting. And he said, manifesting is not attracting what you want, but what you are. And I'm like, oh, score. That's perfect. I love it.
And it's so true. I mean, again, if the law of vibration is really true, then you only attract what you are. Yeah. And I love Wayne Dyer. He's shifted my life in so many ways.
Yeah. And then you look at your life and you're like, okay, well, what is it that I have going on right now? That is what I am. So what is it that I need to shift in order to be, that is what I am?
Totally.
That makes sense.
Oh no, it is, because you're just changing your vibe, right? Because again, like attracts like. So it's just one of those things where you shift your vibe, and then all of a sudden everything else shifts. It's just amazing. I've seen it in my life, and I've seen what it has done for me. And it was crazy because it was not like I was all the doer, right? Do all these different things. Everything I was told, okay, I'm doing it. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, there's got to be a different way. And if I'm the creator of my life, if this is all true, and my mom used to tell me, if you put your mind to it, anything's possible. So I'm like, if all these things are true, then I'm going to hold that as a truth, believe it in myself, knowing that that's true. And I'm going to dictate what success means. I'm going to dictate what a successful chiropractor looks like. I'm going to dictate I'm going to say, this is what I'm choosing to experience. This is what I want to choose for my life. And it was fascinating because it happened. It was the craziest thing. And now I have the honor to help people do that. And it's when they get to that point, it's just amazing how their whole life shifts from something that they're like, oh my God, I didn't have to do as much. Why did I get, like, I love when they're like, I can't believe how much I'm giving my power away. And I just look and I smile from ear to ear. And I'm just like, this is where I wanted to get you to. This is awesome. Now we're in a creative process.
That is amazing. So how can people work with you?
You can find, I do coaching. I have online classes. So I do one-on-one coaching, mainly for business and entrepreneurs. And so that you can go online. When you go to my website, you can set up a free online coaching call where we jump on the phone for 30 minutes, and I'll listen to where you are, what are your challenges. I'll give you a little bit of advice, a couple steps just to move forward, so you're not, wasting your time and all that. And then I'll share, if I can help you, I'll share what I do and what I can do to help the individual achieve whatever that may be. Most of the time people come to me because they want to, they're tired of the grind and hustle. Some people come to me because they just want to create the dream life and they want to be more fulfilled in some way, shape, or form. Because a lot of times business owners, they focus more on the money in the business and they lose out on other attributes of their life, like relationships, or it could be their health, or all the above. And my whole purpose is when I'm working with someone is holistically bringing them up. And it just comes back from my philosophy in chiropractic. Chiropractic, when we do something, it's not a treatment base, it's bringing the whole person back. And so taking that philosophy, I've done it in coaching, where my whole purpose is just to help the individual in every aspect so they can raise up their whole entire life.
I love that. Bringing the whole person back. Transformation.
That's what I teach. And I tell people all the time, like, when we truly get to this point, when we really get to the bread and butter of this work, and it takes time, it's different for everybody. I go, you're transformed. And when I mean by transformed is I always love the image of a caterpillar and then a butterfly. That butterfly can never go back to that caterpillar. No matter what you do, it can't. That's what the goal is of what I'm working with clients, is trying to get them to that point and then continue that process and then show them how they can do that. And then, and be able to help them really realize that, because we're living in a society today where our light needs to shine more. And that's just a, coin on term. What does that mean? And I kind of used to say that all the time. And now I'm kind of saying, we need your gifts. We need your gifts. When you look at the Pauli exclusion principle, it's a quantum mechanics statement that states that there's no two things in the entire universe that are the same. Nothing. Soul, your humans in value. There will never be another human like you in the entirety of this existence of what we call having a human being experience. There will never be another one. So when you understand how unique you are, I always tell people, if you really grasp that, you'll never have a self-worth issue again. You'll never not to be able to see your value. But a lot of times, especially in social media and today, we compare a lot, and we look at different things. And I know I did. And it's one of those things where we're always in a comparing of where we are to others. And I'm always like, forget the ladder, forget this. And I'll never forget this statement by Jerry Seinfeld. I don't know if you know about Jerry Seinfeld. He is the richest comedian in the world, the most net worth, everything. I love Jerry Seinfeld. I love his Seinfeld and all that good stuff. But he got asked a question, and I didn't know this. I don't know if it was Eddie Murphy who asked him this on his show, Having a Coffee with Comedians. But long story short, he says, why didn't you ever take an award? And I was with my wife, and I'm like, wait, this guy, he's got to have at least hundreds of awards. I mean, he's number one, and all of a sudden he's like, because I know you never have accepted any award ever given to you. And he said something so profound that it changed my whole life. And that was, he goes, I don't take an award because that doesn't mean anything. The award is doing what I do every day. The award is getting up every morning and be able to write jokes, because every day he writes jokes. And he's like, that's the award. And I looked at that and I'm like, that's it. I will never accept another award again, no matter what comes my way. I was like, because the award is doing what I do every single day. And I lost the train of point of why I shared that story. I apologize.
Well, you know why you share that story is because I just got chills as you were saying that. That is perfect. I love it.
Good. Yeah. I knew they had to come up for some reason. I'm like, I know I had that for a reason, but whatever reason it is, someone needed.
And I'm sure everybody else got chills as well, because it's perfect. It's perfect. I mean,
and just to share a backstory really quick, real short one. It's just that when I came out, again, I had a self-worth issue, right? So I had low value of myself and so forth. So what did I do? I needed awards to validate my worth as a chiropractor and being someone who's really good at what they do, instead of trusting myself. So what happened though? Since I said that was my value system, and I believe that's what I needed to show proof. And, when I was 29 years old, I was considered one of a worldwide leading physician by the International Association of Chiropractors. From 30 to 32, I started winning awards where we were the best chiropractic office in our town. I was the best chiropractor of my town for like 4 years straight. I was business leader of the year in 2015. The Chamber of Commerce that I worked at was like, we never gave it to someone who's only been in business for 5 years ever. This is like a really respected award. Look at the people who've won. It was like 15 to 25 years, sometimes 10 years. And here I am at 5 years getting it. So yeah, great. I was best under 40, a couple times, so I had the awards, but the last one, there's what happened. I said, I will never accept another award. And I get a phone call the next day, and it was that last award I got. And I just said, great, we're going to go. This is exciting. It's only 12 people out of 20 something communities. And I was considered one of the it's not even like a chiropractic based one. It was just people in communities, who are considered very successful in helping out in their community. And so long story short, that was what I validated myself to be successful. And the last award was the time where I made the change, where I was like, no more. The awards don't mean nothing to me. I'm the one who's valuable in what I do. I have a gift and I'm sharing, and I'm going to share chiropractic in my way to what I believe is deemable and valuable to help people live the best life that they possibly can. And as soon as I shifted that gear, and focused on that being the award, my whole life changed. I mean, less stress, less burnout, more fulfilled. Every aspect of my life improved. And this is no woo-woo stuff. It's saying just blowing hot air. It literally did. I mean, it was amazing how really just take my focus outside and really look at my value inside, and then just appreciate the moment every day. Every time I'm serving, every time I'm taking care of a patient or working with someone, it's just, this is the blessing and the award I get to do every day. And it was just a whole different humbling experience. And I continue that to this day, even with clients. If it's a new client potential, or if it's a client I'm working on, it's just like, man, this is why I do what I do. This is why I study so much. This is where I can put it to work right here.
So your website, empoweringyourreality.com.
Yeah, it's empoweryourreality.com. You can find everything there, coaching there. My podcast is on there. I got some free resources. You'll see a little tab up there on there. Yeah, any questions or anything, you can find me on all my social media handles are on the bottom of my website, on the bottom left. And any questions, you can DM me on social media. I do read my messages and respond to. So it's always a joy to when people bring up hey, you did that video, what does that mean? I'd be like, yeah, here, this is what it explains, or here's a podcast I did on it, or here's a blog article I did here.
Love it. Well, I will make sure that's all in the show notes and also in my blog that I post about my commentary on this show, which is going to be phenomenal. I have a feeling. So this is
I'm excited.
Podcast. Yes. So one last question for you. If you had an hour to spend talking with someone in your favorite park bench somewhere, whether that person be on this side of the veil or the other, who would that person be and what would you talk about?
So many I'm thinking of.
You can only pick one.
I know, that's the thing. I can only pick one. And it's like, I don't know why this,
this is my
Jesus.
favorite question.
Jesus is right now. It would be Jesus.
Okay.
Just from his life, what I've studied, at least from his life, not from the Christianity or Catholic, the other stuff that I've looked into from like the Hindu scriptures and so forth, of how he went to the East and studied. And it's funny how his parables are very similar to Hindu parables in the scriptures and all that. Mm-hmm. To what he went through in his life and that deeper, I don't know why Jesus is coming to me. I would have never chose Jesus, but it's coming to me today.
I love it. I would love to talk with Jesus as well.
Just what he went through, I mean, because you look at like one of my shaman friend of mine, we talk a lot about this stuff, about initiations that they used to do back in the day. Mm-hmm. Like they would do so many, like you take this psychedelic and you're going to go through a journey process and you're going to go through the jungle and through the alligator and hopefully you're going to be able to connect and let spirit guide you to get through it. And if you don't, well, we'll see you in the next lifetime. Funny stuff like that. Or they did a lot of the stuff where they put you in a tomb and lock you in with no air, and you had to figure out how to slow your breathing and control your body to come out. And that's how they figured you were being spiritually awakened. Well, that's what there's some theories out there that said that's what Jesus went through. Like it was there was a collective group around there that did those kind of things. But even if he did or didn't, I'm not saying he did, but it's just, I would love to know, like, how did you do that? What was your secret and how you did that? And how did you if you did carry on your life afterwards, there's some threads that show potential there. I was like, how did you pull that? How'd that work? That's my more curiosity with them.
I love it. Well, Dr. Vic, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of Butterfly Kisses. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate all of your wisdom and knowledge on the law of attraction and decoding the matrix. I can't wait to read the book. I have it, and it's going to be fabulous, I'm sure.
Awesome. No, I thank you. And thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Your light is needed very much. And it's helping make this shift in the world that we are. It's happening. It's just, it's a fun process and how it's going, but I appreciate you being a part of it.
Thank you very much. I enjoy being able to get to do this every day. So this is my joy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Butterfly Kisses, a journey of spiritual transformation. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe by hitting the subscribe button. This way you won't miss it when a new episode is released. Also, if you're interested in learning more about Akashic Record readings, you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with me by visiting my website at amygray-cunningham.com. Again, thank you, and remember, always spread your gorgeous wings, my friend, and fly. Until next time, see ya.